Alright, so we're jumping back into one of the most popular subjects in the One Punch Man fandom, and that is the virtual genocide simulation. Because recently this was retranslated by Vimham M and HTX 514, and this is also coming from the second audiobook, Genos' Training. And it's been like almost 2 years since I last talked about this, so obviously a lot has changed since then. And given that we have the new translation, we can go more into things that we probably didn't talk about or just didn't talk about enough before. So let's get into it. So let me just explain what the VGS is real quick for anyone who is unaware. So Dr. Kuseno created like this VR game to help Genos practice by battling virtual opponents. And the virtual opponents are monsters that Genos had faced in the past. And they're just replicated by using data that Genos has in his memory. So it like recreates them along with how powerful they could have been. And also, I guess you wear it like an Oculus Rift or something, and it's able to read your brain waves. And all you have to do is like imagine what you're going to do, and then the game is able to replicate like your movements and your overall strength as well. And then that's how you just battle against these monsters in this virtual world. Now, also, not everything is 100% accurate with this thing, and that's going to be a recurring theme throughout this audiobook, and as well as what I'm going to be talking about in this video. And let me just also put it out there that One himself did write this, and he took extra care with this one as well. Like, it took him like over 10 hours or something to like make amendments and changes to the script so that it was as good as he wanted it to be. So it's pretty much canon for the most part, and that's also why you see this talked about so much within the fandom and why it's used so much as reference points and whatnot. So Genos is the first person we see use this, and let me just put it out there that it's never really made clear which version of Genos this is, but it's probably G4 or somewhere around there, and that's because of the time frame of this audiobook being released, and also what Genos actually says in the audiobook. He says like, after all those upgrades, learning from my defeats, and the time spent studying with Sensei, I am sure that I have gotten stronger. And as well as like his performance against these monsters, so maybe he's G4 or at least close to that level of power. So the first monster that Genos goes against is Mosquito Girl, and it's never really made clear if it's like base form White Mosquito Girl or if it's like her blood form Red Mosquito Girl. But if you listen to the audiobook, you can hear Mosquito Girl make like this distinct laugh when she's like loaded in the system. And if you compare it to the laugh within the actual series, like when Blood Form Mosquito Girl is revealed, it's literally the same laugh. Like they just took it from the anime and added it to this. So I guess that means that this is in fact the blood form of the Mosquito Girl, meaning it's like her at her peak power. So Genos basically like low diffs her. He gives her like a machine gun blows, and then after that he shoots her with what it seems to be like an incineration cannon, and then she's completely destroyed by this. So obviously he's way more powerful than what he was in season 1, and this also makes me think like maybe Mosquito Girl isn't as strong as I thought she was in her blood form, or maybe G4 Genos is just way stronger than what I thought he was, considering like how he didn't have too much difficulty with her. Now the next monster that he goes against is Deep Sea King, and we specifically hear rain in the background, so I guess that means that this is like hydrated Deep Sea King. And Genos also defeats Deep Sea King, and it seems like he probably had an easier time with him than what he did have with Mosquito Girl, because it's just a quicker sequence overall, and there's not as much emphasis put on what could be an incineration cannon. I'm really unsure if he even used it against him. It might have just been machine gun blows, but regardless, he took both of them down quickly and really easy. So yeah, he's definitely increased so much in power from what we saw him originally go against both of them. And then it's stated that he has at least a 70% chance of victory against any demon level monster. So that's pretty interesting. So lastly, he goes against Carnage Kabuto. Now in the translation, it says that you hear alarms, which might be signifying that this is like Carnage mode right off the bat, but I personally don't hear the alarms in this sequence. And I compared it to like the alarms that play in the anime when he goes into Carnage mode, and I just don't hear it. So I'm assuming that this is probably just base form Carnage Kabuto. And also considering what Zombie Man says later on in the audiobook, I'm assuming that like, yeah, he doesn't really go Carnage mode until like later on. But anyway, Carnage Kabuto like low diffs him just as easy as he did the first time they fought, and Genos is like, yeah, I still have a long way to go before I can compete against dragons. So then Genos reveals that the system also has the ability to create ghosts of the users of it. Like, it'll just analyze your data and then, like, make a replicated ghost of you that you could train against. So then Genos, like, goes against himself to get better practice and training out of it. So then he takes the VGS to Saitama, and then Saitama puts it on, and of course he just easily takes care of all of the monsters. And then Genos asks him to go against his own ghost, you know, to go full force against him. And he specifically says, like, hey, remember that death punch? He doesn't say the death punch, but the punch that he used against him in training. Use that against me full force and don't hold back. And he does, and then, of course, the ghost is just annihilated by this. And then Genos is disheartened by this and just thinks that, oh, I can't use Saitama as a good reference point for practice because he's just way too powerful. So then he's somehow able to convince the Hero Association for them to lend him some heroes to further get some data into the VGS. So they give him Snek, Metal Bat, Zombie Man, and Darkshine. So first up, we see Snek go straight into the deep end against Carnage Kabuto, and he gets wrecked by him, of course. Yeah, he beats him in like 2.52 seconds. And then Metal Bat steps up to take on Carnage Kabuto. Now, also, it really seems like he's not in his Carnage mode at this point because, like I said, there's no real indication that he has become that, and I'll go into why I think that is later on. But anyway, it seems like Metal Bat is putting up a pretty good fight against Carnage Kabuto in the beginning, like surprisingly well. Like, you hear him connecting with him, like the bat hitting him, and he's also taking shots from him as well, because Zombie Man's also like, oh, a full frontal assault, meaning that, like, they are going back and forth and trading blows. But then Carnage Kabuto, like, gets serious, I guess, and then just destroys Metal Bat, and the system deems him incapacitated. And it's also revealed that he lasted 3 minutes against Carnage Kabuto, so obviously he did way better against him than what Genos did. But then, you know, Metal Bat obviously isn't happy with this, and he's like, you know, what the hell? And then Genos says, hey, the game registered you as being dead in the virtual world. And he's like, no way, Jose. I might have lost in the game world, but in the real world, it won't go down like that. It might be over once you die in the game world, but in the real world, a death is just a flesh wound. You could totally revive through fighting spirit and have another go. You know what I'm saying? So I made a video dedicated to this line because it's super interesting, but I basically, like, proposed a question, like, does this mean that Metal Bat is, like, kind of immortal or something? Or that, like, he can literally be revived from death through his unique fighting spirit ability? Because remember, one did write this, and he did make amendments to it, so maybe this is, like, one telling us the full extent of Metal Bat's abilities and just powers, because, like, when Metal Bat is fighting against Garo, it seems like he's very close to death. Now, of course, we know that Garo doesn't want to kill humans, but, like, at one point, it seems like Metal Bat is, you know, as close to death as you're going to get, and he's just done. And then out of nowhere, he's back on his feet at the peak of his power with, like, a crazy demonic look on his face. So is this, like, meaning that, like, if it were to go even further, that he would just straight up come back to life? And maybe it means that, like, you have to, like, either cut off Metal Bat's head or, like, disintegrate him or vaporize him or something, or else he's just going to keep coming back to life. It really remains to be seen, but I just really like that this notion was put out there, and it leads us to think, like, wow, what is the extent of Metal Bat's abilities? So then Zombie Man steps up to fight Carnage Kabuto, and this is where we get his famous feat, because he actually defeats Carnage Kabuto in this sequence. So at first, Carnage Kabuto is obviously just annihilating him. He's like, it's making guacamole out of Zombie Man, and as we saw in his fights against Pure Blood and Homeless Emperor, he just has super fast regeneration. And given that this doesn't register as, like, a big deal to Zombie Man, the game doesn't register him as being dead or have enough damage for the game to end or anything. So it just keeps going on for 3 hours of him getting destroyed and regenerating, and it eventually goes to the point of Carnage Kabuto going into Carnage mode. So this is the first time that we know for sure that he does that, because Zombie Man says that he transformed into his Carnage mode or whatever and started rampaging, and it spent all of its stamina and couldn't even move. And that's because the simulation sped up the clock to 1 week in advance. And because, you know, when Carnage Kabuto originally talks about his Carnage mode to Saitama, he says, I'll rampage for a week. So we're finding out what happens after that week-long rampage. He's just done. Like, his stamina is spent so much that he can't even move. And then Zombie Man says, I saw my chance and I started my attack. So I guess like he cuts his head off or something with his axe, or it's not revealed what he does, but he defeats Carnage Kabuto after he's like done, can't even move anymore, and the system registers Zombie Man as being the victor here, which of course is fun and it's awesome. But does this mean that Zombie Man would be able to replicate this feat in real life? Against Carnage Kabuto, probably not. Because, like, do you really think that, like, he would fight him for a week straight and Carnage Kabuto wouldn't be able to figure out how to defeat him? I mean, obviously the game can't take into account for Carnage Kabuto's intelligence, which is obviously rather high, since that was noted by Dr. Genos. So I think this more so means that Zombie Man could probably replicate this against, like, a standard dragon. Like, maybe it would take, like, you know, most of the day for him to, like, have this war of attrition with him and eventually beat him. I mean, if he could do it to Pure Blood, he could probably do it to, like, a low dragon or something, but probably not Carnage Kabuto. But of course, this goes back to the open-ended interpretation of this audiobook that I think one intended. So then Darkshine steps up to the plate and says that he's going to use his full power. And then after 15 minutes of fighting, he defeats Carnage Kabuto. So this is pretty significant because if you just follow the manga, up until this point, you really had no idea the full extent of Darkshine's power. But given that he's able to defeat Carnage Kabuto, like, and we can assume that it was definitely Carnage mode at that point, you know, no shenanigans involved, it's definitely letting us know that he's one of the stronger S-Class heroes and probably definitively like a high dragon for sure. So after this, obviously everybody's impressed. But then Genos reveals to them that the ghost system exists and that, you know, you can have the replicated versions of their battle data. And then all of the S-Class heroes get excited. They're like, hey, let's fight each other's ghosts. And then Metal Bat's like, hey, fight my ghost, Darkshine. And this is like such a tease because it gets us so excited. Like, oh my god, we're going to see the S-Class heroes fight against each other, even if it's in their ghost forms. But then when Genos goes to load up Metal Bat's ghost for Darkshine to fight, it randomly uploads Saitama's ghost, which they're not aware that this is Saitama. They're kind of like, hey, I've seen that before, but they really don't know who it is. So then Darkshine goes against the ghost of Saitama and then gets one-punched by him. Or at least it's implied that he gets one-punched, and then it says that he's been incapacitated in battle. So does this mean that Darkshine can't take a punch from Saitama? Maybe, maybe not, because it's really up in the air if this is like, you know, fully taking into consideration all of their power. And also, like I said, it's just really open for interpretation. And then Darkshine's like, what the hell? Let me fight that guy again. And then when Genos tries to load up Saitama's ghost again, it like freezes and then the game just crashes. And then everybody just chalks it up to the game glitching and they don't really think anything of it. So then Genos, knowing that he has Saitama's ghost in the game, goes back to Saitama's apartment and has Saitama fight against his ghost, because obviously that's a very intriguing question. It's like, could Saitama defeat himself? Like, or what would happen if they were to fight? So then Saitama puts on the VGS, fights his ghost, and then one-punches it. And then obviously Genos is super surprised by this. He's like, Sensei, did you know that you just destroyed the ghost of you from yesterday? And then Saitama's like, well, it's unreliable simulated data, right? It doesn't matter how strong you become in the virtual world, it will never change who you are in real life. I learned this lesson the hard way as a kid when I was so obsessed with leveling up in an RPG, I missed an entire summer. So this is probably a memoir from one, but it's also something that I myself can relate to, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this can as well. But also, if we go back to the unreliable simulated data, that goes back to everything that I was talking about in this video. It's really up for interpretation. It's not really clear-cut, and probably should take everything with a grain of salt. So, like, was the game able to accurately replicate all of Saitama's power? Probably not. It could probably only give so much of his power, along with everyone else, too. I kind of liken this to the Okami mask that Child Emperor had, where it was only able to like go up to 10,000 of a power level, meaning that it wasn't able to gauge all of Saitama's power, and then it actually cracked the mask when it was trying to. So it's probably something like this. And then this ponders the question of, does Saitama get stronger every single day? Because he himself in this audiobook says, obviously, why would I lose to yesterday's me? But that's more so like Saitama's mindset, because he also says that to Glasses in the New Wind Blows bonus chapter. He's like, would the you of today lose to the you of yesterday, or could you beat the yesterday's version of you? So, I mean, it's like a callback to that, but also we know that Saitama removed his limiter, And that means that, like, there's no cap to his power. So does that mean that he becomes stronger every single day? Because we also know that he trains every single day. Murata confirmed that, and it's also kind of alluded in that one sequence in Season 1 when we see, like, the current version of Saitama, like, blazing past the old tracksuit version of him training. So we just assume that maybe he just knocks out his push-up, squats, and sprints, like, every single day. And maybe that accrues more power to him as well. Now, it's really up in the air because Saitama also says in Season 2 when he's talking to King, like, I've reached the peak of my power. I can't get any stronger than this. So is that the truth? Because Saitama also doesn't really understand his power all that well. Because the only people that really know about the limiter and Saitama removing it is Dr. Genos and Zombie Man by proxy. So either Saitama is unaware, or this was actually a narration, or we just don't know. And like I said, it goes back to this is all open-ended, and one just wants to keep it kind of like mysterious, or maybe trying to confuse you on purpose, or he just wants you to decide for yourself. I personally don't have an answer to this, but I'll look more into it in the future and maybe make a video dedicated to the subject of Saitama's power, and if he does become stronger every day, I'll have to look over more evidence. But as of right now, I don't think there's like an actual answer to that question, or at least a definitive one. But that's pretty much it for the video today, guys. Let me know what you thought about this in the comments, and also, if you liked it, please give it a like. I also have a Patreon, gives you access to a weekly Q&A, and if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.